Well, good evening, Little Masters, and welcome to episode 21 of the Rings of Power Wrap-Up.
It's time to pull up a bench here in the common room, folks. I'm James Tauber, the Sage of the South.
And I'm Sara Brown, Shield Maiden of Rohan. We're both here with the Man of the West, Alan Sisto.
And tonight we're going to be talking about the final episode of Season 1, Alloyed, in which an experienced smith with thousands of years of history goes back to school to learn the basics.
Alloyed, not annoyed, I hope, by the time we get to the end of this episode. A quick welcome for those of you joining us for the first time. Here at the Rings of Power Wrap-Up, we talk about the plot, characters, and the lore behind Amazon's The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power.
And we also dive into some of Tolkien's biggest themes while we're at it, like mortality, free will, fellowship, and identity theft, and do our fair share of speculating.
You'll learn something new about Middle-earth every time you listen, and we hope you have a few laughs in the process. We're glad you've joined us.
And we hope you'll be glad you joined as well. Before we get into this week's episode, we want to remind you to check out Alan's original show, The Prancing Pony Podcast.
For more than 6 years, the Prancing Pony Podcast has walked its way through Tolkien's books, from the Silmarillion to the Lord of the Rings, and this season the podcast is continuing that effort with The Return of the King.
Now, some say that the PPP is the finest Tolkien podcast this side of Bree. And this season, I'm going to be co-hosting episodes with a real all-star lineup of folks from the Tolkien community. Humbly, I would like to think that there is no better companion for your extended trip through Middle-earth than the Prancing Pony Podcast.
Now, before we get into this week's release, do we have any clarifications to make from last week's episode?
I don't know. I can't really think of any off the top of my head. I wasn't told of any obvious mistakes that we made.
The only thing I want to clarify is that, certainly I think Celebrimbor is alive, right?
Yeah,
you in
definitely.
agreement about that?
Yeah.
I am. That's a good point to bring that up, because I'm seeing a lot of people say how badly they've changed the lore because Celeborn's dead. No. Galadriel may think he's dead. That doesn't mean he's dead.
No.
Yeah, exactly. We all think Celeborn is alive.
Yeah, Galadriel only says that she hasn't seen him since.
Right. It's a trial separation. It's only been a few hundred years. So.
Yeah, that's nothing, right?
And now it's not working out with Halbrand. She can go back to him. So,
spoiler.
And that's another story.
Yes, it is.
We'll get to that.
We will indeed. But first, we're going to start with The Stranger.
Mm-hmm.
This was the one I think we've all been wondering what was going to happen with this line the entire season from the trailers, from the get-go.
Yeah.
So it opens up with him alone in the Greenwood, and he reaches into his pocket. We see him take a look at the apple and the map, and he hears Nori. He thinks he sees Nori. Surprise!
Yeah, and can I just point out, so we're explicitly told this is the Greenwood, which resolves some of that geography question that we had in the last episode. They clearly were on the edge of the Greenwood, and now that's what they've moved into.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because we mentioned last week that this chief cultist, the Dweller, actually touched in that last episode. Maybe she is able to change into people so long as she has actually physically touched them.
That's what I was thinking as well. Because we see her later shapeshift into the Stranger himself.
Right.
It makes me come back to that moment, and I think we talked about this at the time, that when the three wolves approached him, I wondered if that was actually them. Maybe they all have that capability, but I don't know. That may be a stretch.
Yeah, I think if that were true, they would have confirmed that in some way.
Yes, and it wouldn't make sense for them to attack him because they certainly, for whatever reason, they believe he is Sauron.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
I don't think that the wolves were the cultists. It just seemed to be an interesting parallel, didn't it? 3 cultists.
The fact that there was 3. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What did you think of such an early... Well, it turns out to be a misdirection.
And I think that's the whole point. When it came early, you sort of got the feeling that, I'm not sure. This looks like a play-action pass to me.
Yes.
Sorry, Sara. That's an American football reference. Do I need to apologize to you for that one?
You really do. What on earth? Look, if you keep on doing things like that, I'm going to sit here and talk about cricket.
I'm fine with that. We'll get 2 votes to 1 on talking cricket.
Oh, I'm sorry. You thought there was voting going on in here?
The Rings of Power wrap-up show has suddenly become the cricket show. All right. Well, let's avoid that.
Yeah, let's avoid that because, wow, tedious.
Here we are 6 episodes later, still in the same game. So we have come to serve you, Lord Sauron, and they say it in Quenya. Now, that makes sense because at this point, Black speech is still fairly new. We know lore-wise that Sauron developed it, though we have heard some of it Nampat, and we've heard a lot in the orc storyline.
Gibbertul, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Plus, we don't exactly know who the mystics are yet. And we find out they've come from Rune, but there's, we don't know enough about them to know what other language would be a possibility other than Quenya. Quenya makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does make sense. Mm-hmm. Now, apparently they've had names all along. Did you guys know this? Because I didn't.
That's the only reason why I know who they are, is because when you press pause, when you're watching it on the television, then it comes up with the names of everybody who's in the scene. So I know that we have got the Dweller and the Ascetic and the Nomad.
Okay.
But that's the only reason why I know, because they don't call each other by any names or anything like that.
Hey, Nomad.
That's never happened.
Exactly. Go chase them down.
In this episode, it seems the Ascetic is actually the leader. She's the one giving the commands to the others.
I'd always thought the Dweller was the lead, but
Right.
Yeah, the Dweller seems to be the one with all the power.
Shape-shifting, yes.
Yes.
And the pure magical abilities, right?
Yes, true.
But she's not the one who's directing operations, if you like. And she's dumb enough to leave her staff on the floor at one point. So, maybe she's not the brightest magic user in the box. Who knows? Mm. But yes, the Dweller clearly has enormous power. But the fact that it is focused through a staff, I mean, I've always found it problematic when magic users use objects externalized to themselves to focus their power, because if you don't have that object, you're in trouble.
Yeah, serious trouble. That's true. So we get the announcement that they're there to welcome him to their lands. They talk about that constellation. We now know it's called the Hermit's Hat, and that it is supposedly only visible from someplace in the very far east. And that's when we get the mention of Rune. All right.
Yeah, look, I'm sorry, but Professor Christine Larson is going to want to have a word.
Oh, yeah. At
the moment, Middle-earth is flat, which means that if you can see those stars in the east, you can see those stars anywhere. In Middle-earth.
And unless the stars are extremely close, which would not make any sense.
That would not make any sense.
You could get parallax there if they're close, but then they would be huge and you would be burnt to
even in a spherical world, if this isn't north or south, that wouldn't change anything, right? The stars are different in the northern hemisphere from the southern hemisphere. They're not different from the eastern hemisphere to the western hemisphere.
Yeah, I mean, I could almost hear Christine muttering in sheer irritation when I saw that. I mean, apart from the fact that the stars are meant to be harbingers of good. So the idea that any kind of stars could actually be connected to anything that is not good.
Yeah.
It does go against the law. So yes, Professor Christine Larson will probably be writing something on her blog in red ink very shortly.
All right.
Yeah. But it's interesting, isn't it, that the constellation he has on that piece of paper that he got from Sadok, that's what's on the back of that shield. And that shield, was it the Ascetic that was carrying it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe that's the one. She's the one that's got the little things sticking out by the side of her head.
Yeah, it looks like cat ears.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe that's the one that was carrying the shield.
The Ascetic kind of commands the Dweller to bind the stranger and somehow what they're doing is persuading him that he is Sauron. They're convinced of it for whatever reason. I have questions. Why are they so convinced that he is Sauron?
Everybody's convinced that somebody is somebody they want him to be, and they don't do any background checks, but we'll get to that.
Right.
Well, we get a hint of that later on when they realize that he's not Sauron. We'll come to that. It kind of means that there's at least scope. They presumably know he's a Maya. They're making a 50-50 assumption that it's Sauron.
Yeah. I mean, maybe because a lot of the power that he has shown has kind of gone wrong a number of times. Killed all the moths, broke the branch of the tree.
Which is why they knock him out and bind him, because he's dangerous to them initially.
Yes, yeah.
But then we find out that Sadok has been watching this whole time.
That was a great little reveal, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yes,
so
it's the worst idea in the history of bad ideas.
He's absolutely right.
He's not wrong. Yeah. They decide that they're going to have to get the stranger at this point because, there's only 2 of the cultists there. And nobody goes, hang on a minute, that's not good.
Right, that means there's a third one that's somewhere else. They think it's a good thing, yeah.
She didn't go off to the store to buy lunch for everybody, you know?
She's not popped into the bushes to have a quick,
a little nature break. Yeah.
Exactly.
Can I just comment on the fact that the way that they've tied up the stranger is very Christ-like.
It was.
There's a lot.
A little crucifixion. Mm-hmm.
And Serena Higgins, who I watched the show with last night, made multiple remarks, and Corey Olsen did too, that, we've got 3 magi who've come to welcome it's a very Christmas story in that sense. There's a lot of Christ figures as well. The 3 magi greeting the
3 muddled magi, though,
following a star. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting parallels there.
No, that's interesting. I hadn't actually thought of it from that Christian point of view, but yeah, I noticed the crucifix shape of the way in which. But of course, they're not binding the stranger.
No, it turns out not to be.
They're binding the dweller. Do you know what? The way in which they do the transition between whoever she is pretending to be and then when she becomes herself again, those are really quite well done.
Yes.
When she was Nori, that was so creepy because the actress playing Nori twisted her body totally differently. So it wasn't just in the eyes, it was in the whole physicality of how she was presenting herself.
It's clearly how the dweller got her name. She really
she dwells in other people's.
Creepy beyond.
So scary. I mean, I think there were a lot of horror elements in this episode, and that's one of them. The way in which she actually inhabits she's not actually literally inhabiting the body of others, but she's taking on their form.
Correct.
That's just so creepy. The idea that she could be anybody.
Yeah, and then we get this transition from sort of very magical things to very practical, the ascetic hurling a weapon.
Throwing knife
at Sadak and getting him in the stomach.
Right.
It's quite a shocking moment.
And then so many things happen that we almost forget that he's been hurt because so many things then happen.
Yeah, because that's when we get the battle between the stranger and these cultists, right? It looks like he's defeated 2 of them. He seems to almost blow them away physically. The dweller's still there, though, when we get that one-on-one fight that, like you mentioned, with the staff, where that's clearly the focus of her power.
And she's incredibly powerful.
Very powerful.
She is, although did you feel that this was a little bit too much of a
Saruman callback?
Visual mirror? Yeah, exactly. A Peter Jackson film staff battle between...
We've talked about this all along. They have so many callbacks to the Jackson films and not very many callbacks to the Tolkien text. This was yet another one of those Jackson callbacks to the Saruman battle.
I'm kind of rolling with those now.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's so many of them. And I'm just going, okay, well, it's like a little Easter egg for the Jackson film enthusiasts. We're getting our Easter eggs. Those of us who are buried in the lore, we're getting those.
Which is actually also a nice little foreshadowing of who it turns out to be in terms of him being a wizard rather than Sauron, right?
Yes, it points towards that, doesn't it? With him, with that battle being very reminiscent of the Saruman and Gandalf battle in Orthanc.
Yeah. So then Poppy gets herself caught and they're trying to free her. And that's when, hey, we forgot about Sadak, but he hasn't forgotten about us. He shows up and stabs stabs the ascetic in the foot, causing that really unearthly scream. I mean, wow, it almost seems to have defeated her in some way. But
but that was sore. I mean, that's going to take more than one pedicure to put right.
That is going to leave a mark for sure.
It really is.
We get these little Hobbit-type moments, right? These Harfoot combat moments. He stabs her in the foot. Poppy's dropping little acorns or rocks on
throwing the stones. I thought that was excellent.
That was
a great moment.
And that's when the dweller drops her staff, right? And we see somebody come in and grab it.
Yeah, but I mean, she just drops the staff. And okay, she's going to attack with fire. Fine. Right. She must be assuming that the stranger is out for the count. She is attacking with fire. But having put her staff down, that leaves her slightly more vulnerable, doesn't it? Which we see because Nori persuades the stranger. The stranger is worried. He's worried he's going to hurt her. I mean, the very fact that he's worried he's going to hurt her should tell us that he is not bad, because otherwise it wouldn't bother him at all. And that he believes that he has actually now been told who he is. and that what he's had revealed to him they mention lifting the veil, and there has been some kind of veil over his mind because he doesn't know who he is or where he's from or even how to speak for a long time.
No, and we've seen that gradually lift, but
we see it get very much
suddenly.
better. Suddenly, yes. Because this veil, for whatever reason they have decided that he is Sauron, they have actually had the power to lift the veil in his mind, at least to the extent where language is coming back and some understanding is coming back. Not enough to tell him he isn't actually Sauron. Not at the moment.
Not yet.
But when he speaks those words, when he successfully makes the fire go out, and we hear, I think, the first fully coherent sentence, no hesitation at all from him, when he says, "From shadow you came, to shadow I bid you return." That's the moment where he's got his abilities back in control. He can speak, he can control, and that's when go back to the shadow. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's when the mystics are like, oh,
we've made a mistake.
We've made a mistake. He's not, and they say he's not Sauron. They say he's the other.
Yes.
He is Istar.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it suggests that they knew he was Maya, and there were two options. He was either good Maya, bad Maya, peril or good. And of course, they say he's Istar.
Yeah, and then they say he is, and before we can then get the name, he jumps in with, "I am good."
Good. Yes.
Not I am Groot. I am good.
I am good.
Yeah, so we don't get the name because that is where she was about to say he is, and then we get I am good instead of I am whichever Istar he actually is. And I'm still holding out hope for a blue wizard, but there's so many clues that it's actually Gandalf.
That stuff at the very end of this that we'll get to, the line that he says to Nori makes it point to Gandalf pretty strongly, even though I'm hoping it isn't. Another thing, though, that does is the little visual reference we get when he defeats them and sort of disintegrates them. We get this moth reference, a visible moth.
They all crumble into moths.
Even before that, we get this very wraith-like look to them.
Yeah.
It's clear that they're examples of creatures that are living in both the seen and unseen worlds.
Correct.
I think it's the first time we've seen that, right? I don't think we've seen other creatures that are potentially living in both at once. And, obviously it ties in with the sort of visuals around the ring wraiths and so on. But, we definitely get that wraith look. And then I'm interested in what you think is the reason for this, that transformation into moths.
The moths.
Yeah, that was, again, it felt to me like it was all part of the horror aesthetic that we were getting through this episode. And there were lots and lots of these touches going on. Perhaps because of the fact that they are liminal, that they're from both the seen and the unseen world, they can't be killed.
Right.
They just return to the other.
Right. I mean, he does say, "From shadow you came, to shadow I bid you return," not "die, you evil women."
Which means he knows who they are. He knows what type of creature they are. At least once the veil has lifted.
He has an idea of who they are. So he knows he can't kill them, but he can break them down in this way. Think about the Nazgul, right? When they try to ford the Bruinen and the waters flow all over them and their horses are killed, they cannot be killed. But shapeless, they return to Mordor. Right. Okay? I think it's very similar to that because they cannot be killed. They're neither dead nor undead or alive, or they're none of those things. They're somewhere liminal. So what he can do is remove their physical form.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think it's very similar to that moment at the river.
Yeah.
And then we get, in contrast to that, we get the type of mortality we're a lot more familiar with.
Yeah.
And it becomes clear that Sadoc is mortally wounded. Yeah.
But didn't you think this was a beautiful and simple moment?
It was beautiful because he seemed to not necessarily embrace it. He accepted it.
Yeah, he was okay with it.
He accepted his fate. And there was a moment where I thought, the stranger's going to heal him.
And he doesn't.
They gave each other a knowing glance.
Yeah.
As if the stranger understood, no, it's Sadoc's time. Sadoc knows it's his time.
Right. Yeah. I thought it was a beautiful moment, actually. And let's face it, mortality and immortality, those are very clear themes already in Rings of Power. We've seen it mostly connected with the elves. Durin the Third saying, I won't help the elves to cheat death.
I won't risk dwarven lives to help the elves cheat death.
Exactly. Right. Here we have a mortal being accepting mortality and just watching the sunrise and dying in a very simple, very calm, very, very sweet kind of manner. And I thought it was an incredibly important moment, actually. It looks like we've killed off poor Lenny Henry.
Right. We only could afford him for 1 year.
Right, exactly. His fee was just so high. But I honestly think that because this is such a major theme, I think we'll look back on this moment of Sadoc just accepting his death as being something really quite significant. I
agree. It needs to stand in contrast with the Númenorians, because I think that's what we need to start seeing at the beginning of season 2.
Yeah.
We do get a touch of it, right? We get a tiny hint of it in the Númenorian thread that we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
But I think we'll see that much more strongly next season, and it will contrast with that acceptance of mortality that we see with Sadoc.
In fact, it's not just contrasting with the Númenorians, contrasting with the elves as well.
Yeah. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, of course, the elves' nature is to be immortal. So
no, but I mean, in terms of he's the only person we've seen so far that seems to accept.
Yeah, that's fair.
His state.
Yes, the missus is waiting.
The missus will be waiting. That was sweet. Yeah. And there's something, obviously there's nothing about him that reminds me of Hurin and Morwen, but the moment of her death, right? How she sits there with Hurin and in silence and watches the sunrise, and then she's passed. It did make me think of that, even though there's nothing at all
has had a much nicer life.
A much nicer life. But there's something about just like knowing it's coming, watching the sun come up, and then being gone. It was the first of a few moments that brought me to tears, and I'm looking forward to talking about the rest.
Yeah. And when we do get to that moment in Númenor,
oh boy,
when we come back to placing these two deaths side by side, I think that will be really significant.
I do as well. So of course he now knows, I in order to remember the rest, in order to lift the veil the rest of the way, I do need to go to Rune. The question is, well, they were wrong about your name. Could they be wrong about that?
It's a good question.
Yeah, it's a very, very good question. But, he's convinced that that's where he needs to go. And I think, that goes back to even before they showed up, right? Because he's been trying to draw this constellation and figure that out from day one. So that does click. And that's when we also get the little discussion about Istar. Is that your kind? And he explains what that means. What does Istar mean?
Yeah. And he says, wise one in your language, or wizard.
Yeah. And I think that is there for those folks who haven't read Tolkien, don't know the word Istar or Istari. I think actually having that lovely moment where Nori is representing those people, isn't she?
Absolutely.
She's the bridge to the text here.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's the epistemic regime at work. It's the person with the least knowledge, sort of trying to get their perspective. There was a very interesting line that he gives here, right? Our paths are laid before us by powers greater than our own. And when that happens, our job is to make our feet go where our hearts fear to tread despite the perils. Sort of coming back to that idea of accepting one's fate, but not just accepting it, right? Sort of going with it and
embracing it almost. Yeah.
Exactly.
Considerably more articulate.
Yeah, much more articulate. Yes. Well, as one would expect from an
if one has a script to work from, that really helps.
Yeah, he actually gets to use words now. In fact, I should mention, anybody else absolutely blown away by his acting ability?
Yes. He's had to do so much with just his body and his face.
Yes, and he has.
He's conveyed a myriad of emotions just through his face and his body. And only now does he get to use his words.
It's wonderful.
It has been really good. Yeah. I do think there's some stellar acting in this.
Oh,
I really do.
They're really, and we'll get to even more of that later.
We'll talk about, yes, exactly.
So, of course, as you guys can tell, we're doing what we've done all season, which is taking a storyline all the way through to the end. So, we're still hanging out with the stranger and with the Harfoots. So we'll eventually get to the other stuff. We're talking about things that have 30 minutes of television went by before that moment, right? I mean, the burnt glade and Sadoc's death, and then this discussion about Istar. But
right.
Then we go to near the very end of the show when Nori's family tell her to go with the stranger. That was a somewhat surprising moment.
Surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's the one who actually says no to the stranger.
Right.
When he says, if for it to be an adventure, it needs to be shared. Otherwise, it's just a journey. And she's the one that says, I think I've had enough adventures for a Harfoot. and it's really interesting that she turns him down. But then the family says, no, off you go. Here's your backpack.
Where you belong. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Was anyone else expecting that Poppy would come running after saying, I'm coming with you? I
was just about to say that. I honestly thought Poppy would go as well.
Yeah.
But I do love the fact that it seems that Poppy is now more valued in the Harfoots.
In the community,
because, I mean, if your trail finder is holding the map upside down and you're the one that realizes, then you need to be the trail finder, right?
Yeah, even if you are young, yeah.
Yes, exactly. But you could also see the pride in Poppy.
Oh, yeah.
She's told that she can be the pathfinder. You can just see that she almost
That's right. I absolutely can. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That, I am valuable too.
That moment with Poppy, I have to say that's the other one that really got me. Tears flowing quite readily when she talks about, why does everybody I love have to leave?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
After we made that observation in the episode where they talk about the folks who they left behind, and we realized her entire family was named, and she's by herself and she's pushing her own cart. Wow. That line carries so much more weight when you put those two together.
It does. Yeah, absolutely. And it is it's a tender scene between two, not just friends. They're more like sisters who actually get on, they're really, really close.
Yes.
When Nori finally goes up to join the stranger, and the stranger tells her that people are waving to her, she says, I can't turn around, otherwise I won't make my feet move. She's feeling that separation. She might want to go on this adventure, but she's tearing herself away from her family. And you can feel that. She's not just skipping off into the sunset. And this is the difference when we get to The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. Bilbo goes skipping off with the dwarves because he doesn't have family to worry about or to feel disconnected from when he leaves. When Frodo goes off with Pippin and Sam to head off towards Crick Hollow, he's just leaving behind a house. He's not leaving behind a family. Here we have a Harfoot who is leaving behind everything she's ever known, including her family. And that's a big deal, I think.
It's a huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge deal. By the way, when she does say farewell to her family, I want to back up just a little bit. I loved when Largo says, some father I am, I haven't taught you anything. And she repeats back all those little pieces of Hobbit wisdom.
Some of them are hilarious.
It's totally, it's like the stuff you hear in The Lord of the Rings that Sam says his father taught him. It's all these little aphorisms, these little proverbs, some of which are hilarious. And all
don't
of which
squat
are
by a
somewhat
river.
applicable.
You never know when you might take a drink downstream.
That was brilliant.
Okay, thanks for that.
I know. Thanks for the obvious. I thought it was really a neat little moment, and it touched on the very hobbity nature of the Harfoots, which, I mean, surprise, they're hobbits. But, the idea that we're starting to see the development of Harfoots into what we know of as Third Age hobbits. Somebody made the observation online, and I don't remember who it was. Have you all noticed that their wheels are solid round? They're not spoked wheels.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
There's definitely
they resemble something else.
that those are going to become the doors of the holes that they dig in some place in the future.
Oh, that's a lovely thing to notice.
It really, really is. And, the fact that the wheels are even mentioned in the comments that Largo makes to Nori as she leaves, talking about that a Harfoot without manners is like a square wheel. I think we're going to be seeing those again in the future.
I think so.
That was really, really neat. Right up until the moment that made my eyes roll audibly in my head.
Okay, yes.
You all know where I'm going with
this. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Going.
When in doubt, Meriadoc, always follow your nose.
Yes.
Which, of course, always makes me think, and you two are of an age that maybe you remember this as well, but maybe not, because I don't know if Fruit Loops were a cereal where you all were from. But, follow your nose. It always knows. All I can think of is Toucan Sam and a bowl of Fruit Loops, man.
As Sara gazes blankly at her fellow
Well, I'm just glad that both of you didn't, gaze.
Well, I know the cereal. I don't know that particular advertising campaign for it.
Oh, man. Yeah, that was something that, even when Gandalf said that in the Jackson films, it was kind of like, oh, a little Toucan Sam. But really here, it just felt like a little too on the nose. No pun intended, actually. Truly, intended. That's just pure brilliance, subconscious brilliance is one might
something,
say. It's such an obvious call out to Gandalf. Now, are we supposed to think this is Gandalf?
I was going to ask that, because there are some people that think that is the smoking gun, that this must be Gandalf.
There were so many other hints, right? I mean, the way he whispers to the fireflies, the fact that he turned the cultists into moths, just like the moth that he speaks to on the top of Saruman's tower.
And the fire responds to him.
Yeah. So many things. And now he's taking hobbits off on adventures into the wild blue.
Yes,
I mean, it's everything.
I'm still hoping, though.
We know so little, though, about the blue wizards. There's no reason to think that some of those characteristics we associate with Gandalf aren't just characteristics of wizards in general.
But the actual quote of follow your nose feels very, very personal and very specific.
Absolutely.
I mean, unless there's, of course, an Istari phrase book someplace that they have to study before they...
Who knows? There could be.
Yes. That's true. I mean, they've got to figure out what are the native ways, and they're just looking at, well, one thing we can say is, when in doubt, follow your nose. Okay, well, I guess that's something all the Istari say.
But to go back to the actual text for the moment, Gandalf does say, to the east I go not.
Yes.
Okay, now we can take that in a number of different ways. That can mean, I don't go to the east, I have never gone to the east, I will never go to the east. Or it could be, I went, I didn't like it, I'm not going back.
I'm never going back. Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Yes.
Exactly.
And if he ends up being, let's say, Olorin, and leaves at the end of the 4th or middle of the 5th season to go back to Valinor, okay, I'll keep my hissy fit locked in a box.
Will you though? Not sure.
The thing for me that's so important is that Gandalf's actual arrival, the arrival of the Gandalf, not necessarily Olorin, if this is a precursor, is super important in the Third Age because, it's the Third Age, right? We are now past the last alliance of elves and men. We need this outside intervention to bring the free peoples of Middle-earth together to unite against Sauron, who is now a much bigger threat than he is at this point in the Second Age. Though, say that to Celebrimbor, who ends up being the banner. But, Sauron's a bad guy even in the Second Age, but he's not the cover all the lands in a second darkness sort of threat that he is in the Third Age.
Not yet, yeah.
And that's the thing. So sending Gandalf, having him arrive by boat, having Círdan give him the ring because he needs to kindle hearts with it, is all super, super central to the idea of Gandalf. And that worries me a little bit.
Yeah, so what's the purpose of having Gandalf in the Second Age?
Right.
What's the purpose of having him there? That's a big question, actually, because there's no sense in actually having Gandalf there unless he's going to do something in the battle against Sauron. But he doesn't do anything in the battle against Sauron in the Second Age, as far as we know.
As far as we know.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that he never went to Middle-earth in the Second Age.
Correct.
Because there are hints in some of the text that he might have done that. It does say in Tolkien's own writing that the Blue Wizards did go into Middle-earth in the Second Age.
And they went to the east. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So I still hoping that it's one of the
holding out hope.
I know.
But can we just say he's not a Balrog?
Thankfully.
Yes. I concede that now.
Now you concede it, right? It took until the morning after the show for you to concede.
Okay, he's not a Balrog. Fine.
All right. Well, when we come back, folks, we're going to dive into Eregion and that fancy reveal in just a little bit.
about to get back to our conversation about today's episode, but we want to remind you that when you finish listening, the talk continues all night long at the Rings of Power wrap-up, all off-season too.
Mm-hmm.
We have an amazing community of listeners, and they really do keep the conversation going. From the Rings of Power group on Facebook, our Twitter feed, our Reddit community, and more.
Now on Facebook, just look for Rings Wrap-Up. Be sure to follow the page so that you get all of our posts and episode releases, but also join our group for some great discussions on the show and on each of our episodes.
And if you're on Reddit, look us up at r/Rings Wrap-Up and follow us on Twitter and Instagram, where we're at Rings Wrap-Up, because I promise we're not going to stop talking about this just because the series is over.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
Yes. But we do have a quick favor to ask. If you do like the show, please help us by giving us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts and recommend us to your friends.
Indeed. Thank you. Well, we're going to go ahead and get right back into the storylines. We're going to move on to Eregion.
Mm-hmm.
And
I don't know why nothing happens in Eregion in this episode, surely.
By the way, can I just say that it was really neat to see actually Eregion and not just the outside shot of a forge being built and scaffolded?
Yes.
It's nice to see an entire city.
Yeah, that moment of seeing Galadriel and Halbrand riding the horse towards it, really reminiscent of those shots of Gandalf riding towards Minas Tirith.
Yeah, a little bit. It also made me think a little bit of the scenes with Galadriel and Elendil in Númenor as they were leaving or going back to Armenelos from the Hall of Lore.
Yeah.
And in fact, for the briefest of moments, I thought, how in the world did they get to... No, that's not Númenor. Just for just a millisecond, because the architecture was just similar enough. Uh-huh. But clearly this is
Galadriel wasn't smiling as much as she was.
No, that's true. On that
No,
horse. Well, she's dragging around a half-dead Sauron.
Yeah.
I know.
Spoilers.
We still don't know that yet. Spoilers. But I do hope that nobody listens to our show before watching the television show. That would be a very weird way to watch.
Do not do that.
Please
kids.
don't. Stop now. Go watch the show.
Do not do this at home.
So, of course, after that lovely horse shot, right, the exterior shot there of them riding their way to Eregion, we cut to Elrond and Celebrimbor talking about, Gil-galad's almost here, right? We've failed to find a way.
There's a strange moment I just want to point out, and I'd love to hear what other people think about this.
Yeah.
Just before we get the mid-shot of Elrond and Celebrimbor, we get this really wide shot of 3 elves walking along the bridge. And then we immediately cut to Elrond and Celebrimbor. And I'm like, weren't there 3?
Was it just some sort of an establishing shot, or were those 3, were Elrond and Celebrimbor 2 of those 3?
I thought it was an establishing shot just to show,
so they're just random 3 people.
elves wandering around Eregion.
There's a population here. There are people that live here. It's not just a forge.
Was one of them wearing a green muumuu?
Yes, I think so. And one of them looked like Elrond. So, but anyway, I wanted to point that out. Some other people have said what happened to the third person. It could be it was just an establishing shot and there's no relevance at all.
Maybe it's like the shot of Arwen at Helm's Deep coming out of the the one that wasn't supposed to make it out, right?
Well, if it is an elf in a green muumuu, maybe the shop in Eregion, that's what it sells.
Green muumuus.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah,
maybe that might be Eregion's fashion for this season.
It might be.
Maybe.
Yep. So maybe that's it.
Real quick as an aside before we get back into the storyline, anybody else think that folks are wearing the wrong clothes for being in a forge?
Yes.
I mean, you're wearing stuff that frankly looks like you could catch a loose ember on it very easily.
Yeah, I mean, we do see a better forging outfit on Celebrimbor this time around. He does leave the green muumuu at home. He's got the big leather apron. He's got these sort of sleeve protectors and that kind of
work gloves.
But he is wearing this gold chain. I wouldn't have thought having that around something hot would be a great idea, but we suffer for fashion, right?
I guess so. True creation requires sacrifice.
Right.
All right. So we get this interesting philosophy that Celebrimbor starts to put forward, which is that we have to do more with less. Mm-hmm. So Elrond is just convinced at this point, we've got to fall on our sword. Let's tell Celebrimbor and get packing for Valinor, which is a little disappointing. Elrond's like, I'm done. That's it. We're done. We're going to have to quit now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the boss is coming and we haven't finished the task.
Yeah, we're going to get fired, so let's just go back to Valinor. Which, by the way, since you all want to go to Valinor, since that's kind of what you all are expecting to, since that is your ultimate reward when Gil-galad says, "You get a boat trip to Valinor." Ba, ba, ba. You all get to go back to Valinor. You should be happy. I don't get this.
But it's only okay when you just get sent there. That not everybody wants to go. Just ask Galadriel.
That's fair. That's true. Mm-hmm. That's true. Well, speaking of Galadriel, she and Halbrand arrive. And Elrond is more than surprised.
Yes.
Like, wait a minute, what? But you can see the hesitation on his face. Very confused.
She's surprised too to see him.
She is. Like, wait a minute, what are you doing down here?
What are you doing in Eregion?
Yeah, I was expecting to see you in Lindon, not here in Eregion. And I don't want to have to explain anything yet, but now I'm going to obviously have to.
Now, last week we were talking about whether she was going to take him to Lindon, to Gil-galad. Yeah. But of course, we were saying that Eregion is a lot closer, and
much
that's
closer.
Clearly, what she did. Yeah.
Yeah. At least she knew not to take him all the way up to Lindon. James, do you have an understanding of what the healers were saying in Quenya?
I do not, because they didn't subtitle it, and so it was much more difficult. It'll take a lot more time to work out what they were saying.
Well, because it just said "a tule Coiviena."
Coiviena.
Okay, so Coiviena is related to Cuivienen.
I was wondering if it was. It sounded so much like it.
Yeah, it is related to life. The first part of that means life. Okay. So the sort of things you would expect somebody doing healing to do. It's the same thing. I mentioned it before. The stranger says it when he's healing the tree. It's in the Aglario when they wish long life to the halflings. You get the quio is the verb there. They're all related. Yeah.
I didn't realize that was related to Cuivienen. That's really interesting. All right. Well, now we go ahead and cut to Galadriel and Elrond, and, well, we have to have a talk, don't we? I do like where it starts. Elrond admitting his error. I should have trusted you. I should never have put you on that boat. I like that. The humility, the recognition that he was wrong. He didn't have to be called on it.
Yep. And then we get her explanation of why she felt the need to leave the ship. It was because, she didn't feel worthy of Valinor. And then she added to that the task was not complete, of course.
Yeah. And that, I think, is the thing that we all thought all along. It was just that she still had that job to do to finish Finrod's task of hunting down Sauron.
Yeah, it wasn't that she was, stomping off the boat in a sulk because she didn't want to get sent home. No, not at all. It actually really, it was much more humble than that. More humble than I think some people realized. She didn't feel worthy, and therefore she did not belong there. She had things to do before she could feel worthy.
And indeed, that's true, right? I mean, when we look at the conversation that she had with Adar a couple of episodes ago, and then the transition that she had last week into this more thoughtful, wiser, one might say, Galadriel.
Yeah, one who's been learning lessons.
She clearly has grown significantly since then. Yeah.
We also get, I think, confirmation that she didn't have a grand plan of how she was going to get back. She sort of just admits all I could do was swim, and hope,
just keep swimming, just keep swimming.
I do love the way in which this metaphor of swimming and drowning is kind of being used across episodes. We had that used by D4 last week, of course, when he was talking about needing to save his friend who was drowning.
Yeah.
So it just seems to be a metaphor that's kind of working here.
I agree. It also gives us a clue that the conversation began before we got to watch it, because clearly Elrond has already told Galadriel about the corruption in their fating. Because she wouldn't have known about that because she left Lindon long before that was a thing. Mithranium has not been brought up to her, previously. So clearly off screen, she's learned about what's going on.
Yeah. Just to quickly come back to that drowning thing, of course, in the vision that she is pulled into by Sauron, she is drowning. That's exactly what's happening. Yeah. She is drowning.
Yeah, that's exactly. 100% she is
and
drowning.
And then Elrond actually pulls her out of the river. So,
I cannot wait to get to that. I love that moment. That's one of those other tender moments that brought tears to my eyes. But as opposed to some other moments that brought tears to my eyes because I was laughing so hard. One of them was Celebrimbor's gullibility in this next scene.
He is prideful, isn't he?
Oh my goodness!
Oh, and he gets charmed. He gets charmed.
The
Celebrimbor. Oh my gosh!
But I thought that Charles Edwards did this so brilliantly. You could see him kind of suddenly start to glow. It's like, well, yes.
Oh yes. Why?
This is the Celebrimbor, and you can see him kind of going, "Ooh, somebody's recognizing me."
I can tell you all about it in song form.
Exactly. But it was this moment when Halbrand enters this scene that I knew for sure that he was Sauron.
Yes.
First of all, we get Celebrimbor saying, reveal yourself. Okay?
Yeah.
Reveal yourself.
And
then we get the camera panning left. And then out of the shadows steps Halbrand. And then he opens his mouth, and the first thing that comes out of his mouth is flattery. And I just thought, yep, told you he was hinky. And actually,
But we did get that moment where he says, the master that I apprenticed to. And that made me actually think that maybe he was... We've talked before about the possibility that we're really going to see sort of two versions of Sauron, and that maybe the stranger was one, and that Halbrand was like a lesser version that was going to corrupt from within in Eregion. So there was a brief moment where I thought, okay, maybe he's still like Sauron's number 2. You know, like, could the master be Sauron? But clearly now we're talking about
Morgoth.
The master is Morgoth.
Right. Yeah, that's what I got from that as well. It was so clear by the end of this scene. Yeah, we know who this is. Yes. Just call it a gift. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Call it a gift. I think at that point, anybody who knows the lore.
Exactly.
Now, again, I'm going to try to remember to do these more often, folks, and I apologize for those of you who are not lore nerds who have had to like dig on your own, because that's really our job. We should be doing that. A gift. Now, that is a callback to one of Sauron's other names. He goes by the name Anatar in the Second Age in Eregion, and Anatar simply means Lord of Gifts. But because Anatar is not in The Lord of the Rings or The Appendices or The Hobbit, the showrunners don't have the right to use that name. So we will not hear him called Anatar unless somehow they negotiate for that like they did with Armenelos. But that's when he says, oh, call it a gift. It's absolutely a hello, lore people. I am the Lord of Gifts.
Yeah, I was 99.99% convinced. And when that line came out, that's it. I know who you are.
That pushed me right over the edge. Yeah.
I want to come back to the thing that he said back in episode 3 that was the first strong indication to me that he was Sauron, which is when he revealed his whole, plan for how you have mastery over someone. Right? Remember the conversation? Give them the means to master their fears. Yeah. And we just see that played out here perfectly, right?
Yeah. And that's exactly what he does, isn't
He's giving them the means. Exactly. He's giving them the means.
And that is how you have the means to master them. And that's exactly what's going on.
Even if you are also the cause of their fears in the first place.
That is just a side issue.
It makes it so much easier to give somebody the ability to master their fears when you are the one triggering the cause of their fears. It's a win-win.
Yeah.
Can I just point out that in the name Anatar, just to tell people the tar in Anatar is the same tar that appears at the start of the names of the Tar Palantir or the rulers.
And the Anna part, remember that one of the names of the land of Númenor was
Alana,
which means land of gift. Anybody get the feeling that Celebrimbor, who's supposedly the world's greatest smith, should already have known about the concept of alloys? I'm sorry, this is where I was starting to lose it. Like,
I think he knows about the concept of alloys, but the thing is, he's been so fixated, as have all of them, on Mithril that the idea that only Mithril can save us, that he just expected they would be able to get their hands on vast quantities of Mithril, and then he would be able to craft something and all would be well. And I honestly think that he's been so fixated on that. But that is part of Celebrimbor's problem. He gets fixated on things. He gets drawn into them.
He sees only one solution.
He becomes obsessive, and it is so ridiculously easy for Halbrand to manipulate him. It really is. It's a combination of flattery and also getting Celebrimbor to think that things are his idea.
That's exactly what I was thinking. And that's really easy to do when you solve his problems for him. Yeah.
Can I just point out, did you immediately, when you saw those 3 gemstones, know that they were going to be used for the 3 rings for the elves? That the colors were right?
Sapphire, ruby, and adamant. Yeah, it was like, wow, could they be more obvious here? Yeah,
exactly.
Except I was a little surprised at how heavily saturated they were. They looked like sort of like costume jewelry you'd get out of one of those carnival things.
I liked it, and coming to what the rings ended up looking like. I enjoyed them a lot more than the Peter Jackson prologue.
They were simpler in some ways. They weren't quite as fancy.
The adamant one was pretty fancy with the twisted, braided sort of.
But the one in the Peter Jackson films had this sort of cage effect over the top of it, and it actually covered the stone, whereas the stones are very much prominent in these three rings.
Yeah, these popped a lot more. Yeah. I liked that. I like the color.
And by the way, if they decide they're going to sell merchandise, I'm going to be nudging my husband towards buying me a copy of that Nenya, because I thought that was really pretty, actually.
That is a nice one. I still want the dagger, personally. That's the...
Yes, but you'll get arrested across many counties in Wales for possessing a dagger like that, so maybe I'll just stick with the ring.
Plus, you may be called upon to melt it down.
Well, true creation requires sacrifice.
Exactly.
So, the king is here, and he wants to have a word, right? There's talk of this one object for all Middle Earth. Okay. Anybody else here get hints of the ring at that point?
Yes. Yeah. But what I did like was Gil-galad pointing out the problem with that.
Oh, yeah. This is a problem.
Yes. See, here's where I've...
One object?
Yeah. Gil-galad and D3 have very similar kind of personality traits that you don't necessarily love them for saying things like this, but what they're saying is truth.
Yeah.
It might not be the popular thing to say, but what they're saying is truth. And when Gil-galad says, you want to give me what now? He's actually pointing out that this is a seriously bad idea. And he is not wrong. Even Galadriel, when we finally get to making the rings and stuff, says, no, one will always corrupt. And it's a seriously bad idea. I can see why Celebrimbor is going for the idea of something circular, with the idea of, the power radiating around itself and reflecting back on itself constantly. And,
I sort of thought like a flashlight or a torch would be literally if we're supposed to use this to...
Like a bat signal. You could have it like a bat signal. Yeah.
Everybody can bathe in the light of the Valor that way. I mean, a sword, a scepter, a crown, and that's what they land on, a crown. A circular form would be ideal. I love that line. Like, wow, can we be like telegraphing this any more clearly?
Exactly.
But what is important to note is the different things that the people in that scene suggest as being the one thing. Elrond says a scepter. Galadriel says a weapon.
Yeah, a sword, right.
Celebrimbor, a crown. I think those three choices tell you something about the characters who are suggesting them.
Yes.
They really do, don't they? You're absolutely right. Authority in a civil sense, military power.
Right.
And then,
royal. Political power and will. With Celebrimbor here in this particular moment, when he's trying to sell this to Gil-galad, he does not mention once that what he's making is supposed to save the elves. He doesn't talk about that at all. What he says is, we're creating a new power. He's become fixated.
A new kind of power, right. Not of strength, but of spirit. And that's when he gets into the lines.
That's when we get the line. But what we see here is him being drawn into crafting items of power, which is exactly what he said right back at the beginning, that he wanted to be more like Feanor and have the opportunity to craft things of power.
But he goes a step too far for Halbrand's good when he says that this power, not of strength, but of spirit, not of the flesh, but over flesh, power of the unseen world.
Oops.
Galadriel's like, ding, ding, ding. I've heard this before.
Hang on. This is ringing a bell.
Wait a minute. Red alert, red alert.
And we did too in the, previously on Rings of Power, they showed Adar. They repeated that. It's always interesting. Yes, we remembered that Adar had said it. Yes.
I have to be honest, I usually skip the recaps, but I deliberately watched them for this one because I knew they were going to be really super relevant for the whole episode. So I did watch them.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, and of course, and by the way, it starts off reminding us about the dagger as well, so, which is going to obviously become significant.
That's when the dagger is going to be involved for sure. So, Gil-galad says, no, we're pulling the plug on the project. Everybody pack up and go home. We're going to disband the entire city. Seems like a slightly, slight overreaction. Can't they just head for Valinor from here? Why do we have to disband the entire city? But that's what we got to do. Everybody come back to Lindon. And then we get this really interesting follow-up with Galadriel and Celebrimbor. Where did you hear that phrase? What do you mean of the flesh, not over flesh? What?
Celebrimbor slips into that stammering Ian Holm Bilbo.
It's the Bilbo thing.
Oh, the ring's in my pocket. Which we've seen before.
I think those are my words.
Exactly.
Yeah, behind the scenes, he's being thoroughly manipulated.
We could tell that from the beginning, right? Our very first encounter with Celebrimbor, it was clear how he was going to be manipulated. His weakness was evident. Now we've seen only part of it. I think, Sara, I can't wait to get to your ideas, but we're going to talk a little bit about that at the end of this storyline about where this might go in the future. We're not done seeing Celebrimbor being manipulated by Sauron.
No way. No.
So Elrond tries to pull a you owe me on Gil-galad, who has none of this.
No.
I owe you. I don't owe you anything. I am your king.
Yeah. But it's the way he says you are owed nothing. It's really dismissive, really kind of unpleasant. And this is not the first time.
It's almost like you, half-elf, are owed nothing.
And it's not the first time that Gil-galad has been dismissive and really quite unpleasant towards Elrond, which is a bit strange. Elrond Perithel, as if being Perithel is a bad thing. Yeah. I mean, I didn't like his attitude at all.
No.
And so when Elrond kind of casts a bit of shade back again.
Yeah.
When he reminds Gil-galad of his own words, or have you forgotten your own
about
words,
hope, mere
High
hope.
King?
Right.
The tone there would be a little bit insolent towards the High King.
Yeah.
But you know what? Elrond's a little bit annoyed because Gil-galad...
The High King sort of deserves that insolence, frankly.
Gil-galad deserves that. Yeah.
Yeah. It does get him some more time, but not much, right? He's asked for 3 months. And then later on, we overhear Elrond and Celebrimbor talking about 3 weeks. So they certainly don't have a lot of time.
Negotiated right back down again.
Yeah, but they have a little bit. All right. So now Galadriel is suspicious, right? She's got some things going on in her head. The lines that Celebrimbor said really made her think. So she calls a guy to the side and says, listen, I need you to do something I should have done ages and ages ago, which is a background check. Can we just Google this guy? What is it, like $2.99 to get like a full report on this guy, get his cell phone numbers, get all of his email addresses? Who is this guy? And you're asking now?
Although he does say we don't have many records of...
that is true.
Of the Loman,
But we have some.
I mean, he is the elven lore master, according to when you press pause and look at it. He's an elven lore master, so at least she's got access to one. She didn't have access to a lore master when she was
fair.
On Númenor.
No, that's true. Númenor would not have the history of the Southlands, but...
No. What, of the low men?
Oh,
dear
seriously.
Me. Absolutely not.
We got another reminder of that with Gil-galad's little line, too, about, is this
of course it comes from him, yes.
And Celebrimbor had to take credit for it, like, no, it was my idea. He just sort of... It was the key that broke the dam, which, by the way, was an interesting line.
Which I thought was I thought interesting choice of words.
Nod to what happened in episode 6, yeah. So... Halbrand was far too cheery about Celebrimbor finding a way. Of course he'll find a way with Halbrand manipulating him behind the scenes. And his thanking Galadriel with that creepy little bit about, I'll make sure nobody else forgets.
Yeah, but let's look at the language that Halbrand uses throughout this episode. And actually, once we learn that he is Sauron, you can go back to the beginning and think about everything he says. Everything he says can be taken in different ways. Yeah. It's just that Galadriel has chosen to hear what she wanted to hear. That's all. But when we hear him say things like, I can't believe someone like me would be here working with the Smiths of Eregion. Well, yeah, because who would believe that Sauron would be right there working with the Smiths of Eregion? Right. So it sounds like, oh, humble me. Isn't this wonderful? I'm just blown away by the privilege of being here. So you could hear exactly that if that's what you think is being said.
Yeah.
But actually what he's saying is something else. And this is the manipulation of Sauron. He's done this all along.
Yes, he has.
Even when we finally get to the moment when he's revealed, you know, and he says, I told you I got it off the body of a dead guy.
And James, you called that. You called that all the way back at the beginning.
Yeah,
I regret now.
Bit of truth in every lie.
Yeah, it's true. Well, speaking of that reveal, we're never going to get there if we don't move along a little bit more quickly. So we're going to pick up the pace a touch. We get this, after we cut away from it, we cut back to an explosion in the forge. I thought that was interesting, right? And the problem apparently is that Mithril is proud, as Celebrimbor says, and won't take to these other alloys. Elrond's quote there is more than disturbing. Tapping into the powers of the seen and unseen world seem to soften the boundaries between them?
Ouch. Is that a good idea?
Can we see that this is really, really a bad idea at this point? Yeah.
It's interesting how much they're setting up the mechanism of the rings.
Yes.
Right? So they're already through the mithril healing capabilities of the mithril, explaining the preservation properties, but they're also tapping into this whole idea that somehow the rings relate to passing from the seen world to the unseen world, foreshadowing the ring wraiths.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, none of this seems like a good idea, really, does it?
None of it is.
But, there is a problem, and I mentioned this earlier, when you externalize your power.
Yeah.
When you use an object to focus your power through, that is actually not the best idea.
No, it's a gamble.
I mean, Sauron, when he makes his one ring, it's actually the object that will bring him down.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a very, very good point. And so, of course, it almost devolves into a fight, right? Celebrimbor gets testy. Galadriel suggests a break. Halbrand pipes in, and we're going to end up coaxing the metals together. We're not going to use pressure. We're going to coax them together. What, like with a little red wine and some berry white? I mean, how are you going to coax the metals
it's funny you should
together?
say that, because this is a metaphor after all. Think about how he tries to coax Galadriel to join with him.
That's a very good point.
There's a reason why this episode is called Alloyed. It's not just about metals coming together.
It never is. The titles, I have to give them some credit for that. The titles are never about just the obvious. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yes.
So that's when the background check shows up, right? That's when the guy comes in and says, here's the scroll. And we end up cutting to Galadriel reading the scroll, and she rolls it up when Halbrand arrives. He's got the news at this point, right? We're going to make two objects, not one. And you're like, wait a minute, two? I don't remember there ever being a problem with two objects. What? So clearly they're going to keep going. But that's when things get really...
I think that at this point, Halbrand has an intention for these two objects.
Oh, yeah.
That becomes clearer later.
One for him and
one for Galadriel. Yes. Yeah.
So this is when she finally... She knows it. She just wants him to admit it, right? Tell me who you really are. There is no king of the Southlands.
But she's almost got this fear in her voice.
Yeah.
She knows the answer, but she almost can't bear to hear it.
Because, oh man, have I screwed up. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. How have I tied myself to Sauron, the very person that I've been trying to hunt ever since my brother's death. Wow.
So this reminds me, for those of you who've watched Breaking Bad, this reminds me of the amazing scene when the brother-in-law realizes that Walter White is Heisenberg. It's a very similar kind of thing that you've had these two people that have been close together the whole time, one of whose job is to find the bad guy, and it turns out that this close person he's been close to is the bad guy. And it's brilliantly acted in Breaking Bad, and the same thing here. It's just this incredible realization and rage that the person goes into.
Fooled.
Yeah.
So duped.
Yep.
It really cuts to the heart of who you are as well with something like this, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Everything that Galadriel has done has been about hunting down Sauron. And she's saved his life. She's brought him to Eregion. She's introduced him to her friends.
She made him king for about an hour before the kingdom was destroyed.
Yeah. So, but then she reveals, doesn't she, that there is no king of the Southlands. The line was broken. The last man who bore that crest died 1,000 years ago. And then we get the repeat of that line that we first heard back in Númenor. I told you, I found it on a dead man. Yes, just 1,000 years ago, that's all. It was a guy that died 1,000 years ago.
Man,
almost certainly somebody who died in the service of Sauron.
Quite possibly.
And then we get the line. I've been awake since before the breaking of the first silence.
Yep.
I've had many names.
Yeah.
And we talked about this, Sara, he changes his posture.
Yes, he does.
His face changes. There's this transformation before our eyes, and it's just amazing.
It really is.
We've talked before about the non-verbal acting that we've seen in this show, and this is just a phenomenal example of that. I think matched only by the response from Morveth Clark.
Yeah.
Her rage and her face is just so incredibly well portrayed.
It is.
At that moment when she
when she
finally, there's no doubt now.
No, none. And she goes to kill him,
Sauron.
but, really, kind of what's the point? You're not going to be able to just
What's
kill
the
him.
point? Yeah, right, exactly.
I mean, it kind of brings me
Yeah.
back to Adar, who supposedly killed Sauron. And
I
at
have
that moment when
questions.
Halbrand says, "Remember me," did I cause somebody pain? And, you killed me, but you can't really kill a Maya. So, what is the point?
Yeah.
But that's when we get into this really psychologically intense, he's in her head.
We've not seen this kind of filmmaking in this show before. It's very different. Psychological thriller kind of thing. Yeah.
And there is some amazing stuff going on in here.
Oh, there really is.
Yeah, I mean, the moment where we realize that she is supposedly back in Valinor, it's the same area where we last saw her right at the very beginning, speaking with her brother. And then it's supposedly her brother who comes over. Now, it is recognizable that his voice is slightly different already to the Finrod that we heard back in episode 1. He looks like Finrod, but it's a bit like, going back to the cultists, it's a bit like the way in which she can inhabit another shape. This is exactly what's going on here, and it is so superbly well acted.
It is.
The voice is different, and that could have been done in post-production, absolutely.
Sure.
But the body language is totally different to the Finrod that we saw at the beginning. Facial expressions are different. One of the things that I focused on, because it creeped me the heck out, is the smile. Smile, the mouth, it was wrong. It
was
just
wrong.
looked wrong.
Yeah.
And I mean, the words coming out of his mouth didn't fit Finrod anyway.
No.
But it was just the look of the face didn't look quite right. The mouth wasn't right at all. The body language was different, and it was so creepy. It's more of the horror elements that we were talking about earlier.
And psychological horror here, right? This is not jump scare stuff at all. This is deeply, deeply embedded in your mind sort of stuff. The lies that he was telling her through Finrod's mouth about Sauron's task was to ensure peace, and wow. Or the touch the darkness once more. His face when he said that was so creepy. Beyond creepy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, we'll see a little bit more about what he means by that, right? This is the beginning of Sauron's attempts really to seduce Galadriel.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
That happens really when they get to the raft, not immediately, right? First we get on the raft and we get this talk of Morgoth, right? I mean, this is what Galadriel's big hang-up is but Morgoth. And Sauron tries desperately to explain that, well, the defeat of Morgoth was a good thing. I was so grateful for it. It was the release of this giant fist that was around my neck. I never really wanted to do those terrible things. I was made to do those terrible things. It's not really my fault. I mean, you can hear this sort of self-justification and excusing of his behavior. It gets worse from here, right? He claims he felt the light of the one again.
Oh, yeah.
This sounds like the pleading. It sounds like the pleading he may have done at the end of the first
Yes.
age.
Yeah.
Right?
Don't kill me. I could be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, he only changes his mind once he realizes that he would be a servant in Valinor compared to a ruler in Middle-earth. It's interesting. I want to point out this whole idea that he was trying to bring order and healing to Middle-earth is not that much of a stretch, because we are told that he felt that the Valar had forgotten Middle-earth,
Well, he wasn't
and
wrong.
that it was his job to bring order to it. So,
I mean, they had pretty much forsaken Middle-earth. They weren't popping back just to check in at all. They were living nicely in Valinor and completely ignoring Middle-earth. So he wasn't wrong there, actually.
But it's also very different from his master, Morgoth. See, Morgoth was very much a nihilist. He wanted to just destroy everything. Sauron wanted to rule it all and organize it all. And
yes, and if you're going to rule something, you can't destroy it.
Right.
Because you want something to be there to rule.
Exactly. So Sauron was not about the destruction of all things like Morgoth was. He was not, he wasn't trying to annihilate all of the elves or all of the world.
Right.
Sauron was trying to establish a rule that was unquestioned and that was only his.
Yes.
In D&D alignment terms, would we characterize it as chaotic evil versus lawful evil?
Yeah, absolutely. Sauron's lawful evil, and Morgoth would have been chaotic evil, absolutely.
Yes, yeah, that makes great sense. I mean, the problem, of course, is that he equates ruling with saving.
He does. Yeah, that line. Oh my goodness, that line about saving Middle-earth. And she asks about, the difference between saving and ruling. And he says that I don't see a difference.
Yeah, I see no difference.
Oh, wow.
And she says, that is why I will never be at your side. But before that, we have to talk about the wonderful visual when the sea goes like a mirror.
Yes.
And then the camera tilts
Uh-huh.
and you see the reflection. And it's so cleverly done because you have Galadriel's body, physicality on the raft. She's not defeated or anything.
No.
But the way in which the shadow form of Galadriel is standing is prouder, taller, shoulders back. Very much so. And of course, we have a Sauron figure with the lovely hat that Sauron seems to wear. This is a vision of what might be. We've had a number of nods to the Mirror of Galadriel throughout these 8 episodes. And I think this is another nod to that, showing something that could be. It has not yet come to pass. It's a terrifying moment because there's a beat where you think, will she be tempted? Because he says to her, that you're not valued. Right. I will value you.
All others look at you and doubt, but I see your light and your greatness.
Yeah. Yes. And then he says, look at what you could do. You bind me to the light and I'll bind you to power. Now, we know that Galadriel is keen on the idea of power. We know that.
Yes. She left Valinor specifically because she wanted to rule realms of her own.
Right. Yeah. Yes. So here we've got more alloying going on, of course, binding Sauron to light, which of course he has no real intention of anyway.
None.
And binding Galadriel to power, coaxing them together, coaxing these things together. Right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, the metaphor running through that, what I like is that the metaphor is not beaten over your head.
Right.
It's not got flags sticking up going, hey, I'm a metaphor, please pay attention. It's actually really quite well done.
It is.
And I really like it. And there's that beat after he offers her that when he says, you will be a queen, fair as the sea and the sun, stronger than the foundations
of the earth.
But yeah, I mean, in the Jackson films, the stronger than the foundations of the earth, very much right out of the text. Here they actually add something that's out of the text that was not in the Jackson films. And it's the part about being fair as the sea and the sun.
Mm-hmm.
This is, of course, in the Mirror of Galadriel in the book, and she's speaking to Frodo after he's offered her the ring. Fair as the sea and the sun and the snow upon the mountain, dreadful as the storm and the lightning, stronger than the foundations of the earth, all shall love me and despair.
Yeah.
Wow. So I have to give them some kudos for using that text. Fair as the sea and the sun was very nice.
Yeah. I mean, the Jackson film said beautiful and terrible as the dawn.
Yes, which was very close. Yeah, that worked. Fantastic moment here, though. This whole sequence, I have to say, I'm still trying to figure out whether I like this episode as a whole, but I loved this sequence. I thought it was not only fantastically written, it was fantastically acted and powerfully shot. The use of this camera right in the face of the actors.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, so close that they had to use a wide angle. I mean, you could tell visually, you're talking about a camera that is inches from their eyeballs. And these people are acting their guts out right in front of a lens that's inches away from their eyes, and they're having to stare that whole time in the glass.
And having that right that it is so challenging for the viewer.
Oh, yes, it is.
Because it's coming right out.
It is very uncomfortable. Yeah.
It really is. I mean, it is meant to be, obviously, but it's so well done like that.
Very
it really
well
makes you feel in that moment. It's terrifying. It's really, really confrontational. And then, of course, Sauron starts to lose his temper.
Oh, he
does.
Starts
to get angry. And he says, you have no choice. Without me, the elves are doomed. You need me. What will the elves do when I tell them you were my ally? Oh my goodness. I mean, this is really cutting right at the heart of Galadriel.
This is, and I want to be sensitive to this, but what I see here is what you read about when you read about abusive relationships. This is a guy who is manipulative, who is gaslighting, who is threatening every step of the way. It gets more and more elevated. And it was disturbing for that reason alone. I mean, of course, that's what you expect from Sauron. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that's the kind of guy he would be, right?
Yeah.
He's the guy who gets, the police called on him and he's wearing his wife beater t-shirt because he's abusing his spouse. I mean, that's who he is. Yep. He is a manipulative, terrible person. And you see it in his character, right? He doesn't raise a fist to her. He doesn't physically hurt her, but he goes from lying to her about the past, gaslighting, to lying to her about the future, to manipulating her, to threatening her, to yelling and screaming at her. Yep. It is terrifying.
Because it just ramps it up, doesn't it?
Every step of the way.
Yeah.
It makes me angry. I watch it.
It's horrifying to watch, actually, because we haven't seen Halbrand behave in that way. We've seen him violent.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that moment in Númenor where he takes on those 4.
Oh, my goodness, yes. It's no wonder they had no chance against him, is it?
This is Sauron, yeah.
Right. Although he was very careful to make sure that they did manage to bruise and cut him, because otherwise it might have looked just a little bit
too obvious. Human here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. But here it's a different kind of violence.
Yeah, it is.
It's psychological violence.
Violence.
Yeah, and it's terrifying.
Well, speaking of deliberate injury, the lance wound
that
got him to Region in the first place.
Exactly. I said last week, I thought, oh, really?
Self-inflicted.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's no way. I mean, he's a Maiar. He could have healed that just by looking at it.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So after he loses his temper, now she's underwater in this scene, right? He is drowning her in this vision that he is causing in her mind. He's literally, because he's not coming to save her now, right? Halbrand is not pulling her out. She's drowning. And instead, it's Elrond who saves her.
It's Elrond who saves her because she is drowning, actually.
She's literally drowning in that river.
Yeah.
What a powerful moment that is.
Yeah. I mean, Elrond is almost beside himself. Like, what on earth is going on?
Right.
You can see his utter confusion. And then James, he says, Aquith tesse Galadriel.
Yeah. So again, that's that same related word for life or living. Yeah, related. I couldn't quite work this out. I need to do some more research. Tessa seems potentially related to the word for maiden. I'm not sure what he's saying, unless he's just sort of saying live maiden or something like that.
Okay.
It's got that R particle at the start, which is how you make something an imperative. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not entirely sure. I need to do some more research on it. Yeah. But we're getting all these. It's interesting that almost all the Quenya that we've heard has to do with healing life and bringing life back to plants or people or
I like getting the backstory on Elrond a little bit about his being orphaned and without kin. I mean, okay, it's not quite the way the story goes. Galadriel actually had nothing to do with him, but it's neat that's, at least we get the reminder that he's orphaned and without kin.
I liked it except for the lack of mention of Elros.
I know. What about your twin brother? Right, exactly.
Where was Elros when he was alone and had no friends? Yeah.
Alone without kin except for my twin brother. Yeah. I like the tenderness of the moment, and
I did.
That was
I
neat.
did.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily like the lore fidelity. No.
It's a shame that Elros got lost there, actually.
Yeah. Especially because it's not like he hasn't been mentioned, right? I mean, Galadriel discussed him with the Lendil at the Hall of Lore.
Right. So this was a moment where they could have.
Yeah.
Yes. You gave my brother and me some water.
Yes. That would have been easy. Yes. Yeah.
So, of course, that's when she finds out that Celebrimbor's almost done. So now it's the race, right? It's the race back to the forge. And, they get up there. And that's when Galadriel says, if Well, first of all, she's clearly looking for him. But if Halbrand ever comes back, he is not to be trusted. And I think we're going to come back to that because her unwillingness to discuss the details of that will leave an opening. Yeah, there will be an opening.
Then we get something a little unusual because it seemed to me that when she was rushing back, it was to stop.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
The making of the rings too.
Yeah.
And now she all of a sudden seems all for it as long as they make 3. She seems to all of a sudden decided if it's 3, it's fine.
Right.
And she explains that 1 corrupts, 2 divides, and then 3
provides
balance.
Provides balance, as Celebrimbor works it out.
Right.
But it seemed a little odd to me.
Unless she was rushing up there to make sure that Halbrand or Sauerbrand wasn't still there.
Sauerbrand, Halron. I'm not sure which to go with.
Elrond says they're almost done.
Yeah.
And she panics and runs because...
Or maybe she thinks they're making 2 and she knows that's a bad idea.
Maybe that's the concern. Yeah,
maybe. That's a good point.
Yeah, but this fact that she doesn't... She tells Elrond to trust her, but she doesn't trust him with the truth. And that's kind of interesting. And it does remind me of when she goes to visit Melian and she doesn't tell her about the kinslaying or the reasons for why she's not good about talking about the bad stuff in her past, is she?
She doesn't openly lie, but she doesn't necessarily tell all of the truth.
No, but she lies by omission. Yes, exactly. So I want to come back to...
Yes,
in a bit, when we finish the rest of this, I want to come back to the potential ramifications of her not revealing.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back to, we've sort of not really talked about, what we think about that whole stranger reveal, but we're going to talk about that as well as the Sauron reveal, before we wrap up the episode. But I thought at this point, it was interesting. We get the discussion of the forging of the Elven rings and the phrase untouched by other hands. That's very important.
Yep.
Because as we know, the 3 Elven rings are unsullied by Sauron. But of course, the gold and silver we have here is insufficient. It is inadequate, I should say. It is not pure enough. We need pure gold and silver. Now, of course, the metallurgist in me, which is not a very large portion of me, I must admit, I have no experience in that, says that gold is gold and silver is silver. And if you need to purify,
doesn't matter where it's from.
Doesn't matter where it's from.
Point of elements. Yes.
Chemical composition of gold is the chemical composition of gold. But somehow we need gold and silver.
Not if it's from Valinor. When it's from Valinor, it's different.
Yes, it's special.
Even though it is not the land that causes the elves to be immortal, it is the elves that hallow the land. The land is just the land. The land there is no different than the land in Middle Earth. But anyway, I digress. We need gold and silver from Valinor. There's only one source of both gold and silver from Valinor here in this room, and true creation requires sacrifice. So...
Yeah. I think actually that the whole point of having this conversation about we need, the best gold and silver, it's got to come from Valinor. I think it's leading up to a moment of Galadriel letting some of the past go.
Yes. Yes.
And I think because everything has been focused on avenging her brother.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I think actually it's got much more to do with that than it has on we need a very particular kind of gold and a very particular kind of silver. It's really more about Galadriel giving up. Yeah, exactly. Giving up the dagger.
It is, which she does, right?
Yeah. And that was the trigger for my prediction about this exact scene, was that she gave up the sword in the previous episode. The last bit of lingering connection to the revenge was the dagger. And then once the title was revealed as alloyed, I thought, okay, it's going to be the dagger and the mithril.
We had a few nods towards the old fiery eyeball, by the way, in some of this smelting process.
Yeah.
Did you notice that the bowl into which the molten gold and silver was poured was the same looking bowl as the one that's used in the prologue in the Jackson film for Fellowship of the Ring?
Yes.
It looks very, very similar. But they've poured that in, and then they drop the piece of mithril in, and it spins, and it just looks like a fiery eye to me.
It does. I mean, that top-down view looked so much like the Eye of Sauron. It was, again, sometimes their things are a little unsubtle, and this felt like one of those moments. But that's when, of course, we get some of this, this molten metal poured into a mold, and we create. It looks like ingots of alloyed metals, right? They're flat at this point.
I don't know if there's a technical term for them, but what gets produced in the forge that then gets brought to the jeweler to actually craft into the.
I said ingot, but that probably isn't the right word at all. I mean, it's some sort of a small I don't know, tab.
Yeah, I don't know what the term is.
Yeah, I don't either. I'm sure we'll find out. Somebody will tell us, and that's great.
Somebody will tell us.
We'll fill that in the next correction addendum segment. But that's when we get Elrond discovering this scroll that Galadriel had dropped in the river, and he returns in a hurry. The rings are now nearly complete, and we cut to the rings themselves. And we've talked about this actually just before we started recording. You all loved the visual look of these rings, right? The adamant, the ruby, and the sapphire.
I did, yes, actually. I thought that they were really nicely done. They had a simplicity to the design, but without being just utterly dull. It wasn't just like a band of metal with the stone embedded into it.
They did each have their own unique design.
They did look, each one looked slightly different, but the stones were prominent. So clearly having, some importance. I actually liked the look of them.
And I like the saturation of the color, just like I have enjoyed the saturation of color throughout this series, that it's sort of taking a step away from this trend towards really desaturated filmmaking and really bringing out the vibrant colors. I liked seeing the richness of the colors.
I kind of felt like the over the top red and over the top blue of those two made it look like costume jewelry, but that's a tiny gripe. I'm not going to make a big deal out of that. What I thought was interesting about this shot was Galadriel noticing that Elrond had that scroll. So she now knows that he is aware of something. Now,
something. We don't know what.
No.
There's nothing in that scroll that says he's Sauron.
No.
But
nor would he necessarily have made the connection with Celebrimbor's words to what Adar had said.
Well, because he wasn't there to hear Adar's words. So absolutely. But he now knows that something is wrong with Halbrand, and he's definitely not what he claims to be.
So then we get, of course, the shot of the rings, this time fading into a cut to Sauron's eye. Lovely, well done. And he's heading off to Mount Doom. Even though they don't tell us, we all know that he is heading there to forge a master ring to control all others.
That's something that is going to be interesting, because he actually, when he's talking with Galadriel and she says, "But you fought alongside me," and he said, "Yes, against your enemy and mine."
And mine.
Right. So Adar is clearly an enemy. And see, here's the thing. Adar views the orcs as his children. In a twisted and weird way, he is their father, okay? Along comes Sauron. How does Sauron feel about these orcs? Well, they're just things to be used.
Just cannon fodder, right.
Exactly. So we're going to have a real clash here. And how will the orcs respond to Sauron as well?
Yeah, that's our new Southland storyline in the second season, or the Mordor,
Yes. I think so too. It's strange you were talking about colour saturation there, James. One thing I noticed when we get that shot of Sauron approaching Mordor is the colour is kind of leached out. It's all blacks and greys and smoky colours and things like that. There's no colour there at all. And I think that really perfectly contrasts with the living colour that we see in Eregion. And then we get just these blacks and shades of grey.
I should say something else about Eregion. We talked about how beautiful the buildings were. You like the colors of the rings. I liked Galadriel's green dress. That was a fantastic piece of costume.
I mean, I've commented before that every new costume that Galadriel, every new dress or whatever she gets is more beautiful than the previous one. And that trend continued. This is by far my favorite.
Yeah, it is absolutely gorgeous. Yeah.
I mean, it's obvious that Galadriel has an extensive wardrobe, whereas Celebrimbor and Gil-galad are just hanging out in the same old outfits day after day after day.
You bet your feathery shirts. Well, before we move on to the Númenor storyline, there's not a lot there. Let's just real briefly, because we are sort of running short on time, talk about both the Stranger reveal and the Sauron reveal. Those are really the two big things of the episode, and I want to make sure we get enough chance to talk about those. Sauron reveal first, and then we'll go back in time to the Stranger reveal. What do we think of all that?
Strongly suspected that Halbrand was Sauron ever since that, as I mentioned before, the scene in the prison where he basically laid out the Sauron.
Yeah, Machiavellian technique.
He's totally Sauron's playbook. I'd always thought if Halbrand is not Sauron, then he's got to be somebody really interesting that we haven't thought of before.
That's a fair point.
There's still some open questions. A lot of people have questioned if Halbrand is Sauron, then why was he on the raft?
Yeah.
I have that question.
How did he get on the raft?
What
was he attempting to do? What was Sauron's motivation?
It's not like he knew that if he was on that raft, he was going to run into Galadriel.
He would happen to bump into Galadriel. Exactly. Now, there's been some people that have sort of suggested that a way around that is that Halbrand was not Sauron initially, and at some point, Sauron took over Halbrand. Some people have suggested that happened when Halbrand appears with the injury, that's now Sauron for the first time.
Oh, that it was Halbrand all along until the mortal wound?
The problem with that is that doesn't explain the Sauron-ness of Halbrand before, the prison speech that I talked about.
If you ask me, his attempt on the ship was probably to get to Númenor. That was what he wanted to do. He even told Galadriel as much. Yeah. I was content in Númenor. I would have been fine had you kept me in Númenor.
Yep.
And we know from a lore perspective that he had plenty to do in the Second Age. One of those big tasks was corrupting Eregion and Celebrimbor, and then the other was corrupting Númenor. So he would have been fine either way, and I suspect that that's what he was trying to do with the boat.
It'd be interesting to see if we get any more details about that in the second season. Okay. There was an interview with Charlie Vickers that suggested that we may learn more about the reason for him being on the raft in the second season.
I like that because he talked about this being Sauron's remorseful phase, or repentant phase, if I remember correctly.
It didn't last long.
No, it didn't last long at all. I mean, talking about most of the first season where he really was still trying to sort of make things right, and you see a hint of that when he's trying to explain to Galadriel saying, I told you I did evil and you didn't care. This was, you told me we could put this behind us. And he uses a line that I don't think we talked about when we were discussing this that I really like, that our past is nothing as weighed against our future. The scary part about that is there's some truth to that.
He's not wrong.
No, it's a lot of what Halbrand does, or Sauron does, though.
Yeah.
There's a nugget of truth in every single manipulative.
And that's what makes it so hard, because you're right. It's so manipulative.
I mean, that's kind of right, except sometimes what you've done in the past is informing who you are in the future.
Exactly, because that's what, going back to a totally different storyline, and now we're going to segue into the stranger, that's what Nori explains. You're not who they say you are. You're reflected, who you are is reflected by what you do.
Yes.
For what you do, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I love that, because that's what helps break him out from this idea of being stuck as Sauron. Only you can show what you are. You choose by what you do.
Right. You have to put these two reveals side by side. You have to put them side by side and see all of the parallels that are being done between how the stranger is revealed for what he is, because we still don't know exactly who he is, but we certainly know what he is.
We know what, right. We know his type.
And then the reveal of Halbrand Sauron.
Yeah.
There's some really interesting discussion, conversation going on between these two events, actually.
Yeah. It is easy to take them in a vacuum, but you really shouldn't. You need to compare the two.
No. There's definitely parallels going on, and we'll get to it when we get to Númenor.
Yeah.
We'll see the parallel between the death of Sadoc and the death of Tar Palantir.
Yep.
And we see it between the reveal of the stranger and the reveal of Sauron. I actually think that this episode was very well structured. I think that they had a plan for how they were going to reveal things. I do think there was a heck of a lot squished into this one episode. That might be a criticism.
I think, if we look at the whole season, right, isn't that, one of my big gripes is that there have been some episodes that felt like nothing happened. And then there have been episodes like this where it felt like too much happened in a single episode.
Especially given that the forging of the rings, and now admittedly this is only the 3, so we may get a decent amount of other forging, but such a significant thing took up, 15 minutes?
That's the thing, right? We who know the lore know that Anatar was in Eregion,
300 years.
Corrupting the Gwaith Myrdain.
300 years from when he started teaching them.
Decades.
Until they started the Rings of Power. The Rings of Power then took another 90 years.
For him to basically spend 10 minutes in Eregion and get this done was just a little bit rushed to me. But again, smaller gripes, I suppose. The important thing is that he is the one who manipulated Celebrimbor, and I think we'll continue to. We'll have a prediction episode later. That's not going to be today, but we're going to talk about some predictions for second season. In fact, before we lay out a plan for what we're going to do in the off season, let's actually talk briefly about the Númenor storyline. There wasn't as much there, but let's move on to that. we basically start out with Pharazôn appearing to speak what I thought at the time was of the already have happened death of Tar Palantir.
Yes.
You know, we're going to give him a stone tomb to give him immortality. There's the first real mention, certainly the first real strong mention of the Númenorians' desire for longer life, for immortality.
And again, just to explain for the people not into the lore, one of the signs that Númenor was becoming increasingly obsessed with mortality was they started to build increasingly elaborate tombs and focus more on the veneration of the dead and so on.
Faramir talks about this even in Window on the West when he talks about how their forefathers had, really, it was more important who your ancestors were than who your descendants were.
Yes. You know? And so I love that we're seeing, again, that little bit of a sign of where Númenor's headed.
Yeah.
Just in this conversation, right?
Yeah.
I think they're doing a really good job of that, actually, of bringing in large-scale trends that are happening in Númenor down to an individual event that's happening in this case.
The death of Tar Palantir,
the king's death.
Right.
Yeah. And the first mention, actually, of immortality here in this scene, because we know that this is actually one of the main reasons why Númenor falls, according to the actual text. It was this seeking after immortality.
Yeah.
Here it is right at the end of the first season. You can see it in Pharazôn's face.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when we get to the moment at the end, when he looks down on the body of Tar Palantir, there is an emotion in his face. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's grief for the king himself. It's grief for mortality. The fact that not even a king can escape mortality.
Yeah.
But coming back to the start of that, it's interesting that we see Eärien, who I think some of us had thought we would see maybe reunited with Elendil and finding out that her brothers died.
Yeah.
This was not what I expected to see Eärien in, but it's going to be interesting what they're setting her up for.
Right.
You know, she's one of these selected apprentices that has sort of been commissioned or at least asked to make a proposal, and she gets an hour to sketch a portrait of Tar Palantir. During that process, he wakes up, thinks she's Miriel, and starts speaking to her, saying that he knows what she's been up to in the dark of night, and warns her that if the old ways of our people are not soon restored, our island will fall. Mm-hmm. And she's terrified by this, goes and looks for help, comes back to the bed, he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was wild.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about a spry old man.
Yes. Then we find out that, we see him again, and he's basically confused, saying that he can't tell the reality from what he saw in the Palantir.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he can't tell the past from the present from the future.
What will be, yes.
Now, we have a question in the mailbag. I don't think we're going to get time to get to that, so I'm just going to fill this in right here. The short answer is they don't see into the future.
They're not supposed to.
No.
They're a mind-to-mind communication device,
They can see, they communicate mind to mind. Somebody with strong will can direct it and see other things that are happening now, and somebody can also see things in the past. Like Gandalf talks about, I would like to be able to use the stone to look into the past and see the mind and hand of Feanor at work back when the trees were still around.
Yes, yes.
But Tolkien makes it very clear in a footnote in Unfinished Tales, they do not see the future.
They're not see the future.
And so what they've done is they basically conflated this with Galadriel's mirror. But we'll answer that question at more length another time when we get the chance. But so interestingly, Eärien, when she hears this and, he's opened the door for who he thinks is Miriel, she heads up, right? She goes up into this tower that we had that scene in earlier with Galadriel and Miriel and Palantir.
With the amazing artifacts in the background.
The scrolls and the ancient helm, all those things. I can't wait to... The
Baron and Luthien.
Yeah.
All wonderful. Yeah.
And then the Palantir. Now, look, we know she has no authority to use this thing. We know that the lore says that that when you don't have the authority to use it, they tend not to show you very much, right? I mean, that's why, for example, Saruman was more easily seduced by Sauron with his stone than Denethor was, because Denethor had the legal right to use it as the Stone of Gondor. Saruman, I should say, did not.
Right.
Yes.
It's why Pippin was completely thrown off, while on the other hand, Aragorn could look into that stone and be like, yeah, that's right, man. I'm coming for you, bud. It's all about the right to use the stone. Exactly. You looking at me? You looking at me? Now I want Aragorn to do that. But yeah, so that was that shot, and I loved it. I can't wait. I think season two is actually going to open with Beric finding Isildur, but I think this will be a very close second. Will be what did Eärien do in the tower?
Yep.
But that's when, in this storyline, of course, we cut to the ship as they're arriving. Valandil's on the deck. We transition to the hold where Elendil is helping Miriel navigate by counting the number of steps. Really, another one of these tender moments between Elendil and Miriel. I thought this was really well shot and well written. Again, she asks when he says, "I have you. I've got you." Yep, but who has you? She really can sense the loss that he's endured. And he talks about the name, right? Elendil, which doesn't just mean lover of the stars. It means lover of elves.
Right. And he basically comes out as a member of the faithful to her in a way that's wonderfully understated and ties back to that earlier conversation from episode 3.
It really does. I thought that was actually very well done. Even though he confesses, look, I never thought it would lead to this, right? I did all these things because I knew it was the right thing.
Were you surprised that he sort of turned so quickly back to the faithful?
No, I'm not.
No, I wasn't either. No.
Yeah, when you're in that sort of grief, you're not really going to act quite like yourself. And
neither can you be expected to.
I'm really glad that they brought him back to where he should be. I felt really relieved that what we saw here was the real Elendil and not the grieving Elendil who was just lashing out at Galadriel or anything elvish. And I also loved how it basically brings Miriel out as the faithful.
Yes.
Being of the faithful. My father's taught me that being of the faithful means committing to pay the price, even if we don't know what that price is, trusting that it will be worth it in the end. Yeah. That was great. And
Elendil says that he aims to make the price worth it. And you can see that. I mean,
I got goosebumps when he said that.
Right, exactly. I mean, as far as he knows, his son is dead. Right? Yeah, he's already lost his wife some time ago. He seems to be estranged from his other son. Isildur apparently is dead. The price has got to be made to be worth all of this.
Absolutely, because he's also losing Eärien to that guy from the Hallmark movie. The Kemen haircut, man.
Kemen with his haircut.
This really is a beautiful, beautiful moment, and just a real tender shot there. Not really an embrace. I don't know. It's more like she's leaning against him.
Yeah, she just rests her head on his shoulder. It's not an embrace. It's just
it's not romantic. It's not anything there. This isn't that, the queen's coming on to or anything, folks. This is just two people who have both suffered tremendous loss, who recognize an ally in one another, and not just a political ally, but an ally, a moral ally, somebody who believes the same thing.
It's much better than a political ally. Political ally is always going to stab you in the back when it becomes expedient. But a moral ally, that's somebody you can really hang your hat on.
Yeah, hugely different. So then, of course, she gets up on deck for their journey into the harbor, into Armenelos. And that's when we see that there is something wrong. The black flags are everywhere.
Yeah, which, of course, Pharazôn mentioned at the very beginning of entering the Númenor storyline, when he says, we will fill the harbor with black flags. And it's all about recognizing and noting the death of somebody. It's all about recognizing this moment and keeping the idea of that person in your mind, because I mean, that is the only actual immortality that mortal people have. You remain alive in a sense when the people who knew you are still alive. And that then, of course, fades when the people who know you,
when they die,
they also end up dying. So it's the only immortality that you have. And Pharazôn sees that in the way in which the city is built around him. That is his, not his mausoleum. That's the wrong word for it. This is his monument. That's the word I was looking for. This is his monument. I think it's going to obviously become more an actual seeking after more than this. And the reason why I think that is that moment of Pharazôn looking down at the body of Tar Palantir and just that recognition that what he said at the beginning of the Númenor storyline here about even a king can't avoid mortality. And here it is just right there in front of his face, and he can see the mortality even of ostensibly the most powerful person in Númenor, which, you could argue that one, couldn't you, of what's happened to Tar Palantir. But it's troubling to Pharazôn in very deep ways.
This is why I've never understood the people that were concerned that time compression would mean they wouldn't be able to address mortality.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, we don't have time. In our lives, we experience mortality. Right. It only takes one generation to experience mortality.
Right.
You just need to see loved ones around you dying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's it.
That's it. Mm-hmm.
And I thought that brought it home in this episode. That
Our own lives are a time compression in and of themselves, are they not?
Well, yeah, indeed.
I'm having more problems with the fact that they're jumbling timelines rather than compressing timelines, right? I mean, my struggles are things with the idea that if this is Gandalf arriving in the Second Age, that's a problem to me.
Or the Balrog.
Or the Balrog that's actually the bane of Durin the Fifth, not Durin the Third or Fourth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are the things that I'm having issues with, not the compression itself, because they actually have handled that really well in terms of dealing with the mortality and immortality through so many different places. They've talked about it with the Arondir Bronwyn line. They talked about it with Elrond and Durin, and now they're addressing it here with the Númenorians.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Folks, that does conclude another episode of the Rings of Power wrap-up. We'll get to the mailbag next time. And speaking of next time, now it won't be next week because we are taking a week off for PPP Moot, an event in Milwaukee that's going to be absolutely fantastic. We're going to get to take a tour of the Tolkien exhibit, the art of the manuscript, and there's going to be about 150 of us there in person, another couple hundred people online. Should be a blast. But 2 weeks from today, we are planning on releasing an episode. We are going to be sitting down with the creative team at Plains of Yonder. They are the folks behind the incredible opening title sequence to the Rings of Power. And we're going to get to talk to many of the folks involved in that process in 2 weeks. So please stay tuned then. And then we'll talk more about the rest of our plans for the off season.
Mm-hmm. So exciting. Looking forward to it.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks to the team that helped us get this show out there every week for the last 2 months. Our speedy editor, Jordan Reynolds, our barleyman, Becca Davis, social media manager, Casey Hilsey, and website guru, he is the very model of a modern major general, Phil Dean.
Who now has the famous record of escorting Sauron from the court of Númenor. Not just some southern guy.
It's entirely his fault. He could have done something about it.
You should have run him through right then and there.
We're blaming Phil.
Always.
We're blaming Phil. Yeah. And speaking of the website that Phil works on, give us a visit there at ringswrapup.com. We've got show notes, our online storefront, and eventually, if they ever happen, some outtakes.
It'll never happen. But you'll also want to take a look at our library page, because this show may be about the Amazon adaptation, but the three of us are, first and foremost, fans of the books. So we provided links for you to get all the lore. We do get a few pennies from the purchases you make there, so thank you in advance.
But be sure to send a question to Barleyman too. Now, we've been able to rely on Barleyman lately, but we do get a lot of mail, so we'll get to you when we can. Your question or comment may be featured on a future episode.
As always, though, this has been far too short a time to spend among such excellent and admirable listeners. But until next time.
Farewell for now, friends.